Welcome to the Spirit School of Ministry podcast, where we discuss discipleship in everyday life. Hey there, Pastor Bob here, Pastor David way over there, and his extreme better half, Dawn Lien. Oh, yes.
Hello.
She's here with us.
Hey, babe.
Yes. Hey, long time no see.
Yeah.
We're just having date night here with these two. It's awesome, but the reason we invited Dawn here today is because Dawn, some people might know this, some might not, but apparently you have been a missionary. Is that true?
It's true. That's what
It's
I've
true.
heard.
For like 3 or 4, like you went on a 2-minute trip to, Mexico. That was your mission trip?
Yeah,
or
right
what?
on the beach.
On the
in
beach with
Mexico.
toes in the sand.
Yeah.
That was your mission.
3-day mission trip, 2 days were recreation days.
Yes, that was your mission trip, right?
Yeah.
But seriously, what was your mission when you actually did a mission?
When I actually did a mission, I did a trip. Well, it's more of a life. I
Lifetime.
moved to Mozambique for about 3 years. And then I moved to Madagascar for about 3 years after that.
Wow, that's a lot of time. Someone's sitting there right now listening to this going, 3 years. What would provoke somebody to move there for that long? And that's why you're here today, because we're going to talk to you a little bit about that.
All right.
And right here, I have questions for you. And I know you're nervous about questions because these are
from you.
hard questions, especially from yes. You've grown up knowing my questions.
Yes.
And you've managed to answer only half of them along the way, which is pretty crazy.
Yeah.
You got away with
Try
a
to
lot
avoid
of stuff.
what you can.
It's a good thing.
Yeah.
But
Did you tell our listeners that we're related also?
they probably wouldn't believe that. If they're watching, they're going to go,
Yeah.
he's got so much hair.
Yeah, people watching, I think, might be able to see, but maybe we should describe for people not watching.
Well, like how you
People
and I
just
are,
listening.
You and I are related.
Yeah, there's like a large
Oh, I
bump
mean our
that comes out of
petite
our nose
we
area.
have.
Yeah.
Yes, and a very dry sense of humor.
Yeah.
Yes,
really
that's
protrudes out of our face.
That's
here,
us.
Just so you
Yes,
get a
Dawn is
visual of what we
my
look
daughter. For those that don't know
A
this,
loose understanding of the English language.
yes, extremely loose.
Like. Yes. We have our own language.
Those of you listening or watching, you want to send into Pastor David someday and ask him for his list of things that Dawn has said. He actually has written a book of Dawn sayings. It's incredible. I don't know, it's got to be over 100.
I'm at like 108 right now.
Yeah, I knew there's over 100 of these sayings, and they are so phenomenal that you'll just stay up night laughing. I mean, it's awesome.
Well, they should be in the dictionary.
Like a catch,
Yes.
like a catch 52.
Yeah.
I should go to this list, but as you're
no.
formulating
Go to
your
the list
question,
and I'll ask her hard questions.
as you're
Moving on
formulating these
here.
questions, I will
Yes.
go to this list.
I think you should save the list for when it comes out in printed form. It'd be great.
Yeah.
An Audible would be even better if you did.
I was the one reading.
To mock a hummingbird.
Hummingbird.
All right, I won't do any more.
No, don't do any more for right now.
We'll do more later.
Okay, but we have a very interesting, sometimes serious, always wonderful topic we're talking about here about being a missionary. And so my first question for you is, how did you know you were called to be a missionary? And, was that a choice that you made, or like, was it put on you, or how did this all come about?
Yeah. Well, to tell that, it goes back a long way.
Yes, start at the beginning.
So I would say kind of my interest in missions and my eyes being open to it started when I was in high school. And there was actually a girl my age who got up at this thing called Walk the Talk. It's like a little thing they do at lunchtime for Christian kids. And she got up and shared about a trip she did. And she showed pictures. And I remember just watching this and hearing it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like people do this like this in places like this. Like the people she was talking about were like cannibals still. And like, it was crazy.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, I can't believe there's places like this in our world.
New York.
Yeah. Being from Sierra Village,
Yes,
town
the
of
village.
300 people, we feel like my eyes were a little bit sheltered of what the world was like a little bit. And so kind of getting a first glimpse and a first exposure to it, I was like, wow, this is amazing. I can't believe this is going on in our world. And then, not long after that, I saw this movie. It's like a documentary called Invisible Children. And it kind of burned more in my heart. Like, wow, there's a great need out there. There's kids, desperate need. And I know it's in America too, but my exposure to it was places outside of America. And it kind of just started stirring something in my heart. And from then on, like all through high school, I was like, I feel like I'm supposed to do something with this, but like, I have no clue what to do. And I felt like kind of after doing all that, I'm like, what can I even bring? And I knew I needed to have something to bring. If I wanted to go help these kids, like, who am I? I'm not going to just show up and be able to help somebody. I'm like, I don't have anything to offer. And I was very interested in the medical field. So I ended up going to nursing school right after high school, went to college for nursing and kind of did that as fast as I could. And that way I'd have like something to bring and offer people. And so I worked as a nurse for a couple years, and then I got to go to Haiti for my first time shortly after the earthquake. And I went with, Caleb Kirk and G.D. Matei from here at church, and
Mountain Mercy Project.
With Mountain Mercy Project.
That's a project here at our church, Word of Life Fellowship, that actually pours money and people into places that have been critically affected by either natural disasters or things like that. Yes.
Yeah. So we got to go out there for a few weeks, and it was my first taste of, what I had seen when I was in high school. The first taste of what had been burning in my heart for all those years, and not really knowing what it was. I didn't know what that was in me. And I just remember being in Haiti and sitting on this wall looking out over like rice fields and kids running around. And I was like, God, like, what is this? Like, why am I here? Like, what am I supposed to do with this? Like, just feeling so much in me. And then actually a few months after that is when I found out about this mission school in Mozambique. It's run through Iris Ministries. And I was like, I've got my nursing training. I've got some money saved up now. I've worked for a while, and I'm like, but I have no clue how the heck to be a missionary. Like, what even is that? So I ended up signing up to go to this mission school, and I got accepted. And so, that's kind of a whole thing in its own, but I ended up getting on a plane at I don't remember, I was 21, 22 years old, and I flew halfway across the world to this group I really didn't know anything about. And I didn't know, too much about, but I knew there was a mission school there, and I knew they had a heart for God and a heart for the lost. And so I went to this mission school for a few months. I went for 4 months to Africa that time. And I had a kind of a crazy experience with God there. And
oh, really?
Yeah.
Kind of crazy experience that we're talking about.
I'd say, there's so much. There's so much I could say with that, but
you should.
Sorry, I'm not even looking at you. You're over there.
It's okay. You look at me a lot.
Hi, yeah.
Yes. Fun.
So in this
I'm
school,
looking at you though.
You guys can hold hands. You're no longer dating.
You're doing awesome. Keep it going. You're doing good.
So in this mission school, there's a lot of training about practicalities of being a missionary, and you are also literally living in a third world country. They put you in straight in. We didn't really have running water, except for a few times there was running water. There was 14 of us living in this 500 square foot little room, a little 2-room thing. And you're filthy, you're hungry, we ate rice and beans every day for lunch, but it was just you were just fully immersed in life as a missionary, just to the extreme level. And I just learned so much, and it was such an amazing time with God. We had classes and all this stuff, but there was one day in particular, even at this point, I didn't know if I wanted to be a long-term missionary. I didn't know any missionaries really. we hadn't really had any from church, and I'm like, I don't know who to talk to about this. I don't know what that even like looks like. And so I just remember there was this one day we were at this worship service, and I was laying down on the ground, just my face down. Where we worshiped, it was like open air kind of. And then everyone just kind of huddles around on this like cement area. And we were just like covered in dirt, we all stink. But I was just laying there in the dirt, and I got a vision from God. Like I could see this picture, and I saw myself like walking down this paved road. And at the end of the road, it teed. And I saw myself get to that end, and I got there, and God was like, you have to choose which way you're going to go. And I'm like, oh. And so, I looked over first. I looked over to the left side, and I'm looking down that road, and I could see myself, back in America. I had a beautiful home and, beautiful yard. I had a lot of money. It was beautiful. I had this great life.
You had a great dad and mom.
Yeah. I don't know where they came from. My dad had all this hair, and just kidding. But
that was a while ago.
a long time ago. But I just saw this really great looking life. Like I'm like, oh, that would be a really awesome life to live. And then I looked down the other road, and I actually saw myself how I was like right in that moment, just like no shoes on, just laying in this like red, dusty dirt, just covering all over, and just being like fully immersed in the presence of God, and just hearing like the little kid voices all around me, and just being like there in that kind of moment.
Yeah.
And to me, that represented like being on the mission field. And I was just laying there like, oh my gosh, like, what do I choose? How do I do this? And I'm like, both of these lives look really, really appealing, but are like 100% opposites of each other. And I just remember laying there, and I didn't know what to do. And it wasn't for some time after. And I was like, God, like just crying out. I'm like, felt so just kind of like, welled up. I knew I had to choose. I had to choose. It was at that like pivotal point. And I just felt like God spoke to me, and he said, Dawn, it doesn't matter which side you choose.
Right.
My love for you is going to be exactly the same. Mm-hmm. He's like, my love, it's not based on what you do. And it just hit me, because it was like, it was freeing and releasing. And it was like, it was my choice to make. And it wasn't long after that, I just finally was like, no, like this moment, this place, this is what I want. And for now, this is what I want. And I just said like, yes, God, like I'm saying yes to this call to do this. And it was like immediately just this burden lifted off of me. And I just like knew. But I will say like that moment was then followed by a time where I felt like God took me through like counting the cost. And it wasn't just a simple like, yeah, I'm going to do this. And, I think a lot of people probably looked at me like, it's a 22-year-old just jumping on the plane, like doesn't care about anything. But I really went through a few months when I was there before I came back to America of counting the cost. And
what does that look like for people listening to this?
Yeah.
What
So
does
for
counting
me,
the cost mean?
there was things coming to realization. Like, first of all, I'm like, okay, I'm not going to have a job. I'm not going to get paid anymore. So what does that really look like? You're not going to have a retirement. You're not going to have a security, my own self-made security. Then there's a huge part of it to me was like leaving family. Mm-hmm. And, at the time, my brother Sham and Katura had little kids, and I loved them. And like, I remember, their birthdays would come and go, and I'd miss out on that stuff. And you'd miss out on things with your family and with friends, and you see pictures of friends doing fun things and without you. And just like knowing, okay, I'm choosing this, but I'm going to be choosing to miss out on that stuff. And, just things like that where you realize, okay, there's a lot more to just.
That's a serious thing for to ask a young person, 21, 22 to go through and to think about and to, like you say, count the cost.
Yeah. And I think there's even stuff, I mean, I even feel it in my life today, effects from that.
Absolutely.
And, they're hard. Sometimes it's hard. And I just have to be like, no, like you chose it. It's worth it. I would choose it 100% again. But, sometimes the things you have to leave behind or let go of, they don't just come back to you later. You have to let go of them.
Sometimes, especially talking with people, you forget that there are always consequences with decisions. Sometimes really good consequences, right? It's not always evil or bad, but there are consequences. And sometimes the consequences you don't see right up front, their effect is felt later. And when you say count the cost like that, because you're talking about your life and giving of your life. And I think it is important to count the cost so that way later you're not blaming God for things that you made a decision for, right? Because I think that's a big part. I mean, I think God understands us.
Yeah.
He gets us that, sometimes we vacillate back and forth and sometimes we don't quite understand, why, how, and why did I make that choice? And I think he gets that about us. I know he does. Matter of fact, he's a good father. Yeah. But we do have to, deal with that component of our life. Yeah. And like I said, it could be for a long time afterwards, actually. You could feel the effects.
Yeah.
It's not bad. But even the other, like you said, he gave you a choice. Well, the other one would have consequences too.
Yeah, definitely. Whatever your choice is. Yeah. I'll say too, one of the costs, I thought I had counted too was even to the point of being willing to give up my life. And that, like I was like, oh, I could actually lose my life out here. And it's funny because I thought I had counted that cost until an experience happened with us in Madagascar. And I was sitting there surrounded. We didn't know what the heck was happening, thinking we were going to be murdered one night and just sitting with my friend in the hallway. And it was the first time it really hit me. And I was like, wow, am I willing to literally die for the gospel, like to be here? And I feel like it was like a real heavy moment for me of like having, even as time went on, you think you count those costs, but it's not like a one-time event. You have to keep counting it. And
well, I think also especially in America, we're a little insulated from some of the really bad ramifications of being a Christian in other places. It's not all other places, but some other places, obviously in places in Africa, there's, horrible ramifications on Christians. Places I know in India, they're just killed just because, hey, Christian, great, let's kill you, and so a missionary has to really face that. That's a real life and death experience. It's a different thing. And I agree. You don't really know, I don't think, until you're faced with that stuff. How would you know? Like, how would you know how you would, and that's why when I see someone and they go, oh yeah, I really failed. I denied the Lord. And, people are like, yeah, they weren't really good. I'm like, really? You don't know. You didn't walk in their shoes. You really don't know anything. You can't know until you have your life in your hands or the life of people you love. That's a whole nother thing. Yeah. David, do you have something you want to say? Or?
No, I was just like, that was the first time you thought you were going to die in Madagascar, not all those times in Mozambique that you almost died.
I probably should have thought I was going to die more than I did. Yeah.
Sometimes, David, I think sometimes you're covered in like weird grace.
It's a grace thing.
It's a spiritual stupidity. I mean, spiritual stupor.
Didn't you get like multiple HIV needles in you from people?
Oh yeah, I did think I was going to die then too. I forgot about this. It was a different experience though. I also thought I was going to die one time when I got left at the border.
Oh yeah,
between Mozambique and South Africa.
This is great.
And I kidnapped a guy.
It's great. And all my questions I have, like some of them are like, tell us some of your experiences. But we're talking about all of these questions at once. I love it. It's just all popping out all at once. It's great.
Yeah.
But a little bit of a backstory is your mom says she remembers when you first had this inclination toward missions. she said when you were young, very young, like before high school even, that you there was things you wanted that you were done, and I think even God helped you there in those times, preserved your life actually, I think in many ways, and kept you for the time that he was going to use you. But it's interesting. Another weird backstory, the other side is, moms and dads have to deal with young people. And, you weren't a baby then. You were a grown woman. You were 21.
I was your baby, though.
Well, you'll always be that. You know that. but the reality is that, I remember, matter of fact, I was sharing this with someone just yesterday. I said, I remember the night the Lord visited your mom and I. Mm-hmm. We were driving in a car, leaving our friend's house. We had just had dinner and fellowship and a good time. And it was like 10:30 at night. And we were just driving down the road, just, half a mile from here. It was snowing out and God came in our car. And we're just like, we were both, next thing you know, we're both weeping. And he said to both of us, which I've never had happen before, simultaneously, he announced, he says, "Oh, Dawn's going to go places you would never go. And she's going to do things you would never think about doing. So you need to be ready for this." And he says this, and I turn to my wife and I go, "Honey, the Lord just spoke to me." And, we're both weeping because God showed up in the car. It's hard to explain. It's probably a lot like him showing up with the two roads there. Yeah. And I go, he said that, Dawn's going to go places, and she's like finishing my sentence. Yeah, places we'd never go. And together he gave us that message. Like we had to hear that message, and then of course, hearing all the weird stories that happened. But I actually remember, because we're talking about how did you know and how did you call and all that stuff. I remember when you called, when you were on just your first time there. You weren't really a missionary then. You were there at the school. Yeah, I was at the school. And I remember you called. I remember picking up the phone and immediately sensing, oh, she's staying. That was the thing that came to me.
And I almost said, by the way, I'm staying.
Yes. Yeah. And I think you told me about the two roads at that time. And I'm like, yeah. So I think people, when you deal with missionaries who are a little wild and crazy, they have that wandering kind of spirit.
Wandering Jew.
My little wandering Jew. Yes. That for the other people related to them, not just fathers and mothers, brothers and sisters, husbands, wives, extended family, friends, how to try at least a little bit to understand that part that is so weird, risk-taking. Now, if truth be told, this, David, Dawn is so afraid of things at times.
You just asked afraid of it.
I know. She's afraid of bears and
They are a legit thing to be afraid of.
Yes. And then she's ferocious about things. But it was always, it's your mom and I still laugh. Yeah, she's afraid to go outside when if there's a bear, she thinks there's a bear around. I go, she lived for almost 8 years in the country where things were much worse than the bear.
You argued with guys with machine guns over a couple dollars,
And not only that, everything about the culture and the environment wants to kill you.
Yeah.
I don't know those little details.
But you know what I was?
That's why I live, because I have a healthy fear.
I was just thinking, hearing that story about the two roads, though, just to go back to that real quick. I think it could really help somebody, because it's even helped me in my understanding of God and finding your calling and what you're supposed to do. Because a lot of people that we talk to, as pastors, just think, oh, I made the wrong choice. Now I'm screwed. My life's over. I chose wrong. God wanted me to do this, and I didn't figure it out well enough, and so now I can never have a good life. It can never be fulfilling. But it made me think of, in Jeremiah, it says, "I know the plans I have for you," the multiple plans. And a lot of times God will give you those choices, and he's actually opening two doors, and there's plans either way that are for your good. And so it's not so much like trying to avoid making a mistake. It's making a powerful choice in God, which was what, nobody could force you to go on the mission field or to stay home and be a nurse or anything like that. But you did what was from your heart. And the Lord was growing you into a mature daughter through that. He wasn't just dictating to you and, oh, I hope you figure it out. I hope you guess right. everything's on the line. Oh, you messed it up, So I think that could help people that are making important decisions. There really could be two good options for you to choose. And so it was just something I was thinking.
And I believe the Lord trusts us to make a choice. I think, and especially when you talk about what God was talking about there in Jeremiah too, he was not in a happy place there with his people, and he wasn't, oh, I've got plans for you. It's like, hey, basically, you've refused my plans, and you refuse to make a choice.
He goes on and says, you guys know those guys the king of Babylon roasted in the fire, right?
Right.
You're going to be like them. But that was like a few verses after that verse. So sometimes people take that one out of context.
It's completely taken out of context. It's like, no, you should make a choice here. This is good. You didn't say, well, I'll just lay here in the dirt.
No.
Yeah. That wouldn't have been the right. You'd be like, no.
Do something.
He said, why did I give you this whole vision? For what reason?
Yeah.
But so I have another question. You started to actually touch into this, but I think I'd like you to maybe talk from your heart to people about what kind of preparations did you make to go into the mission field? Like, what did that look like for you? Now, I realize your preparations are not the preparations for everybody.
Yeah, definitely.
Right. And so we're not answering everybody's question about everything, but what happened maybe with your heart and some actual physical things you did. You mentioned about being a nurse. You becoming a nurse, that was not an accident, was it?
No, I wanted to have something to offer people, and I wanted to be able to help people who couldn't help themselves. That was always my mindset. And so I'm like, what can I bring?
Helps you get a visa too.
Yeah, it does help you get a visa.
Oh, really? That's a good thing.
Practically speaking.
No, so those are real practical things to, like I said, we're offering the people who are listening to this who may have inclinations or think, hey, I'd like to go into the mission field. But like, that's a real thing, right? If you have some kind of ability, you can bring that ability into the mission field. They don't need people sitting around going, hi, I'm here. Hi.
Yeah. I do think there's like a healthy balance between it, because like in the places I was, I think there are people who maybe don't necessarily have a strong skill, like a nurse or a teacher. There were people like that there who maybe just like had a passion to like help children and to be like motherly or fatherly to children, to disciple. So you do see that on the mission field as well. Mm-hmm. So it's not like just because you don't have a degree, you're disqualified.
Right. Or a particular skill set.
But I will say, there were times when like people who had actually had a degree, it was easier for them to get visas and to be allowed to stay in the country due to government issues. And I know a lot of countries are like that. So it's not everywhere, but there are places that it actually does matter. It's almost required.
So that really would help somebody.
Yeah. But I think, practically speaking, when you're going, you want to have something to offer people. Mm-hmm. Maybe you're a pastor or you're, evangelist, or you're good at doing films or photography, or
carpenter.
Oh my!
Or
any maintenance people,
like
literally,
or a ministry of helps of any kind. Like you're willing to work. You mean?
Like people who are able to do like administration.
Oh, nice.
Because I can't tell you, like most of the people who run mission organizations are visionary people, and if you've ever hung out with a visionary person,
there's no administration.
There's zero administration. Or the administration, you're like, oh my mother, like what are they doing? Like, that's when you have like a building built one day, and then they're like, no, that should be over here. Actually, why did we do that?
Right.
So I think it's very important that you have there's a whole spectrum of people. So you need those visionaries. I think it's amazing, but you need the people who can like balance your checkbook for you and
so
manage your finance.
It sounds like building a church.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, okay.
You need all the
people, I think that's one thing that sometimes people forget, is that when you're on mission, just like when you're here, you're building the house of God, you're building the church of God, or you might be building an actual church, like an organizational church. And it takes all the same equipping to do that. It takes the same skills and gifts from the Lord to do that.
Yeah.
It's
So, I mean, I think it's great. Like I think people kind of underestimate their ability and like how they could be used on the mission field. And literally any gifting could pretty much be used on the mission field if you're willing to look at it in that way and to understand how you could be used.
so, but this sounds to me like there has to be a heart transfer or alignment with God's heart.
Yeah.
Like, you just can't go because it's a whim, and you really need to bring your heart into alignment there so that you're willing and obedient.
And also, honestly, like I say, you have to know that you're called and being sent, because I saw it on the mission field, like where I was, in Mozambique and whatnot. We saw so many people coming through, and people who wouldn't last, people who thought they were coming for years and they left, after a few months. Either they ran out of finances, they just couldn't handle it, all these things. The spiritual warfare, I mean, we can get all these things, but literally the spiritual like atmosphere is so intense. So if you can't just go on a whim and expect to survive,
You can't go alone.
Yeah.
Without sending, right?
And I've learned that. And
That's an interesting thing, area you're touching on right now, because you said calling and sending. So God can call you, but if you don't wait for the sending component of it, it could be a real problem, huh?
And I feel like that's kind of touches on like a spot in my heart, a little nerve in my heart, because, my early 20s, I'm not going to say I'm much better at submission now, but
I'm not either.
The word submission has always.
Excuse me a moment. Let me help with some fatherly advice to my son-in-law. That's not the time you agree. That's the time you disagree. Okay, just help me
Agree
out
to
with this.
disagree.
You just have to be like, oh, no, you're fine with that.
I'm really good at submitting.
Yes. It just sounds weird. It's a term that sounds weird.
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, submission has always been a little bit of an issue to
Really?
me. I don't know why.
I didn't notice
I
that.
I don't know where that came from.
Must have got it from your mother.
I thought I'd be good at it by now. I'm old, but no.
I'm wearing you down though.
Yeah, I'm wearing it down.
It's good.
But at the time when I wanted to go, I didn't know much. I didn't know how I was going to go, how I'd financially go, and I wasn't always in cahoots with everyone in leadership. We didn't always see eye to eye on everything, but I really felt from God.
There's a little moment of truth coming out here.
Love people, but you don't always agree with them. And but
that saying, the older you get, the smarter your dad was. Yes.
But I really kept hearing from God that I was supposed to submit to leadership in my going to Africa. Both to the mission school, but also when I wanted to move there. And, you touched a little bit on when I called you guys to tell you I was moving back to Africa. And, he kind of left out the fact that they were immediately like, I don't think you should be doing that. And you really need to come home and think about this and pray about it. Like any parent would. I get it. I'm a parent now. I would say that. But, we
knew the inevitable, but we were saying the right things.
Yeah. I literally didn't talk to them for a little while after. So I'm like, they just need to cool down and figure it out. and I remember when I actually got home is when you guys picked me up at the airport, and on the drive home is when you told me that God had that story you just shared about God speaking to you guys. And I just remember being like, oh my gosh, God, you are real.
God, you are real.
Talk to them. But
if you could get through to my parents.
Next step was my pastors.
Yes, you're a God that can move mountains.
Yes. And so, after got through that part, I just really felt like I needed to submit to the leaders in my life ongoing. And for me, that was a very huge step, because I was not that was not me. I did not want to do that.
You were just really passionate about going there too.
Yeah. And I was actually funny because I was reading one of my journals and I said oh God, I don't know how to submit to my leaders. I don't know how to do this. And God said to me, you're never going to know how to do it until you just do it.
Oh.
And I was like, okay, like whatever. So
you're like, now you sound like my father.
Yeah. Okay. But it was funny because I always think back and I'm like, I actually feel like I was kind of cheating because I knew with 100% of my heart that I was supposed to go and be a missionary in Mozambique at that point. Like I knew. So I was like, you know what? It's fine. I'm going to submit to my pastors and my family on this because I already know God wants me there. So he's going to figure it out. So this isn't my problem. And I'm like, I almost feel like I was cheating saying like, yeah, okay, I'll submit to you because I already knew how it was going to go because I knew
Well,
I was supposed to be there.
I'm going to just say in your own little Dawn way here, you're touching, I think some sensitive areas for people who would be listening to this about missions and missionaries, that there's a calling on your life, but that calling does not excuse you from going and walking in faith, especially, and yielding to the rest of the rest of the stuff. So a lot of times people, they get something, a strong calling like that, but they want to just go do it on their own.
Yeah.
And that you can be so out of God's time in that process. Now, I'm positive because God's great, just a great God. There's been some times in the world when people have just done it and gone and it's worked, and great. Praise God for that. I'm sure there's those times also. I'm not ignorant enough to believe that, that only happens one way. But I'm going to say that a lot of the times, or maybe even most of the times, when we get a calling, it should, we need to wait on God a little bit about his time, what he's got planned for real, and that we're in, a unity and, more important, covenant with the people that are in our life, because they are your covering, and you can't operate like that outside. Which brings me to my next little question, actually, because like I said, you're kind of like reading these questions, but what kind of support should a missionary expect when they are out in the field, spiritually, mentally, physically? And the first thing is, can you expect that if you just ran off and did it on your own?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, hopefully you'd still have people who care about you. And
of course they care about you.
But no, I will say, like, it definitely makes a difference. Like I always had just peace in my heart because I knew, like, if all the poop hit the fan, I knew I could call here. Somebody would buy me a plane ticket and, get me home.
Yes.
If something happened. Or I knew, how many times did I call in the middle of the night, like, this crazy thing's happening, like, please pray. And just knowing I had that backing.
Yeah.
So I think it's just so important to have that.
That's an important thing to speak to people who are listening to this, because I'm assuming that you're here because God's got you here to help some people about this. Because without that connection, without that covenant with people, without that, by the way, they may not 100% agree with everything you're doing, and how you do it, and they may not understand. Like, that's not one of the prerequisites, right? Is that everybody has to understand perfectly.
No, definitely not.
Who does? You didn't understand perfectly, right? But they need to be in heart with you and league with you in this thing.
Yeah. And, I'd say, like, I came from a place I felt, I came from a good, people were supporting me, and I knew people had my back. But when you get out on the mission field, you're thousands of miles away, and life goes on for people in America. And I think or wherever they're from, wherever you came from. And it's easy to kind of get into this little bubble of where you're at, and you forget, like, oh no, life's still happening over there. Your life went on every single day also. And my life went on. And I don't think it's anyone's fault, but it's very easy, I don't know, to almost disconnect.
Absolutely.
And so I'd say, like, when I was on the mission field, it's not that I ever felt like uncared for, unloved, uncovered. I felt that, but there is an aspect of feeling like, oh man, like, I'm on my own out here a little bit. And Because in, maybe in the physical you are out there and you're not talking every day to people. You don't have that same kind of relationship as if you were here every day. And I think it's important for people to know that so they can kind of prepare for it. So when it happens, you're not like, oh, nobody loves me all of a sudden, or nobody cares anymore, or like what? Because I went through seasons of feeling like disheartened in that, and but simply because people are going on life here, and I'm going on life there.
Well, I think it actually speaks to both sides of that too. Actually, inadvertently, you may be speaking to that, and that is the mission. The person on mission is feeling that, right? Because life's going on. But the people who are back wherever they came from, they are probably going through some of that too, like that disconnect, and they're not really connected, or do those people ever think about me again, and all of that. So I think that's a really important actually aspect of, like we're talking about preparation to go out, is preparing for that component. Like that could be a very subtle, unknown component. It hits everybody, and it hits everybody in their soul, in their feelings, right? In their emotions. And it can have a pretty severe effect on everybody and relationships.
Yeah, definitely.
And,
just spiritually, like, when you're here, you go to church every Sunday, you're getting fed the word, you do things on your own, you're reading your Bible at home and whatnot. But, my experience on the mission field, like we didn't really ever have like a pastor over us there. You'd had other missionaries were all kind of in the same boat, just kind of struggling. Sometimes you keep your head above water, and because you're going, everywhere's not going to be the same. I can only speak to my experience, but we were in extreme, spiritual warfare. We were surrounded by extreme poverty, extreme need, and it's exhausting. And I don't want it to just sound bad. Like it's also like, when there's so much darkness, like it's a little bit of light just makes such a huge difference.
Right.
And, you got to see that
and
side.
God meets you too.
Yeah. God showed up in like all the time, in crazy ways, but, you do get worn down, very easy. It's very easy to get disheartened, and to kind of get to a point where you feel like, oh, am I just like an aid worker? Am I just like someone who's not even a Christian out here? Because you just get so into the meeting the needs of people. And it's hard to, in some places, to keep the spiritual side of things because you're not in a place where others are providing that to you.
How did you deal with that?
So my roommate and I, we used to listen to some like sermons. We would find we used to like to listen to Bethel's sermons and try to do it frequently. So we were like getting fed. But I mean, there were seasons that I definitely could say I dried out and I was feeling like, blah. And I'd say, it's kind of one thing is short-term missions we talk about, but, in all the places I went, there was groups of short-term missionaries who came and would do like times of prayer. There are people who did inner healing prayer times and like deep prayer times with us. I think those were some of the most like meaningful short-term mission people. And the ones who brought candy.
It's interesting about speaking to short-term mission because maybe one of the biggest things short-term missions could do, and I know people who that's like had been their assignment in life, where they go to minister to the missionaries or the ministers.
Long-termers.
That's their mission. They're not going out there, just to paint a wall or no, they're going out there to help.
You paint the same wall that the other three groups painted the 3 weeks before you.
The missionary then has to go fix after you leave.
Right. Like, this room's getting smaller because the layers of paint.
There's some.
One more layer here.
And we're making fun of that. I don't want to dismiss that because I know that I think it's good for people like that who are thinking about going on a short-term mission, right? That they should also consider like the other people who are there, or maybe the people who are bringing them, who are constantly going and ministering there, how they can minister to them.
Yeah.
Like how they can, like that might be the most effectual component of their ministry is like touching people that are there. It's interesting because I just got back from India and I actually believe that the biggest part, and we had assignments and preaching and all that stuff for, 8 days straight, but I felt like the biggest component of my assignment there was actually for somebody, for a person who's in the field there doing the work. Like, it was the strangest thing when it hit, because we still had to do all the other stuff.
Yeah.
Right. But that one was like the most preeminent thing. I was like, oh, so that, and I remember even talking to the Lord and going, oh, so that's why I'm here. I thought it was for these other things, great messages I had for them, and, educate,
which are good, but
yeah, they're okay. But, great structural prowess. But no, it was like really for someone's heart, because I left and they're still there.
Yeah.
All right. That's the deal.
Well, and they have the connection with the people. They have the language.
Absolutely.
So it's not, I think, because we're going to talk about it, but short-term missions are great, but there's only so much you can do in a week or 2 weeks that is going to make a lasting impact.
Right.
But if you can reach that person who's staying there and doing that day after day, you can make an impact then on people.
Absolutely. And also, I think it gives short-term missionary people exposure to things that they may be making decisions for long-term in the future.
Yeah.
But I think that's actually really good in so many ways, that people recognize that that's happening there.
Yeah. Wow.
So many things. I have more questions for you, but I don't know. We talked a bit. How did God meet you along the way there too? How did that look?
How do you answer that?
That's a tough one.
The first thing that came to my mind, actually, I just remembered. I don't know. I just remembered myself one time, but walking down this little dirt road there. And I had like this horrible day. Like, it was so bad. I think, it was all this bad stuff had happened in one day. And I remember walking out, and it's a long, it was a 15-20 minute walk to my house from the base I worked at. And I was just like so overwhelmed with how bad the day was. But then I just like looked around me, and there was, the kids running past all this. And I was like, you know what? Even like, though this was like the worst day ever, and I'm like, I would 100% do it all over again. Like, I know that I'm supposed to be here, and like, I know God wants me here. And it was like a refreshing. It was like, God just like met me in that, like, even though this is horrible, like, this is where you're supposed to be. So you're going to make it through.
So that's a very simplistic way to be met by God. And, our viewers and listeners, they want some like super miracle heaven, well, I'm glad you mentioned that, because I think that, and that's because that's something we can take home with us, here. Like, sometimes people, have a horrible day and whatever. And if you just stop long enough, if you stop the thoughts and the turmoil and just listen, God will he'll just talk some real sense to you, and love the Father, and also put things in perspective, which is so important. And I think we can miss that. And so God met you, like, and I know he met you in other, I know you saw like the crazy things and healings. And
we saw.
You saw that stuff, and
Definitely.
it's part of the anointing that goes on.
Yeah. I think I also think one thing that stands out, there is like such a weird grace that happens when I think it happens everywhere. But like, when I look back at my time on the mission field and some of the stuff we did, and even just like literally where we lived and how we lived, and I think now, I'm like, could I do that? Like, how did I do that? And it's like, how did we live that way? But when you're in it, there is just such a grace for that season. And I think it happens now. Being a mom, there's definitely a grace for the season, because I'm like, how do I survive this? But in those moments, like, where you end up like, because you'd be like, how do you survive with running water like 5 days a year? And, it's 126 degrees at 10 a.m. and you have no electricity. But like, we look back and we just kind of laugh at it. We're like, oh yeah, that was just you know, it was just fun. It was, it was what it was. And,
Yes.
you know, you just survived it and enjoyed it somehow. But when you look back, you're like, there literally was like a weird grace bubble around you because
It has to be.
yeah, from the outside, you'd be like, there's no way that you.
Well,
do
it's
that.
funny. 'Cause one of the stories is our senior pastor, Pastor Pat here, and myself went to visit Dawn in Madagascar, and pardon me, in Mozambique.
Yeah.
And
He came to both, but
he went to both. Yes. I had enough. I'm not graced for Madagascar, but Mozambique. We were there, and I remember we're leaving, and you come over, and you're like, give me a big hug and say goodbye, Dad. And you said, so Dad, now you feel better now because you've been here. And I'm like, are you crazy? I'm like, that's the grace that's on you. I'm outside of that grace bubble.
I thought you were going to be happy.
my bubble's busted here. That's like, but yeah, so that's, you know, I wanted to ask you, when you go to a foreign country like that, how important is it for you to learn the language?
Oh yeah, super important.
So you would recommend that for someone that's like looking to go to a place?
Yeah, I think it's hard almost to learn a language before you go somewhere.
Right.
I don't know if necessarily you have to,
Right.
like if you're planning on going long term, you know, you could start learning, but I know like once I got there, it was much easier to learn it when you're immersed. You know, like my first week when I moved to Mozambique, when I actually moved there, before I started working or anything, I was just living in this little house by myself. I literally knew nobody. I knew nothing. And all it was people speaking in Portuguese all around me in Macua.
Tell us a little bit about that story. What did they do? Where'd they put you?
I was so we had like two centers where I lived, and it was like the main center. We had an orphanage, our clinic, a school, a church, all this stuff. And like 15, 20 minutes away was our little base where some of the missionaries lived. And also there was a Mozambican Bible school. So there's like, I don't remember, 60 to 100 guys lived there, Mozambican guys who were going to be pastors. And I remember they dropped me off. The nurse who picked me up, she was from South Africa. She dropped me off at my little hut house, you know,
Out in the village.
and not that part. That was a different one. But in our house, and it was just
No, I mean, didn't your first time you get
that was a different.
that
was
village somewhere, just like
we did that too. They that was in the mission school though.
Oh yeah.
One day Heidi Baker was just like, "We need to go live in the village. We need you to be more immersed." And just on the whim, this is a visionary person. On the whim, it was like, take two at a time and put them with one of the mamas, you know, one of the widow mamas from this program, and send them to the village. And they literally just gave us a bag of food. We knew nothing. I'd only been in the country for like 3 weeks at this time. I didn't know how to even say hi barely in Portuguese yet. And here we come, a little bag of food, me and this other, you know, little white girl from, I don't remember if she's from New Zealand or something. And we're going with this mama we'd never met and her 4 little kids. And we just literally walked into the village, and we just walked for.
But she had, you know, a 4-bedroom house, running water, all of that was there?
4-bedroom.
What was it like?
No,
in
it
this
was
little
literally
spot?
a mud hut. And,
mud
you
hut.
know, it's small, half the size of this room we're sitting in right now. And there was the walls were made of mud. The roof was made of thatch, you know, the grass stuff, and the grounds are made of, you know, packed dirt, mud. We had this little day bed we actually bought for her. They had us each buy one, and we all got to sleep on it. And it was like this big. It's made out of rope. It was like and we went and stayed there for 4 days. We stayed in the village, and you know, that's when I learned how to pee in a latrine. And
latrine is a hole in the ground, right?
Just a hole in the ground.
Yes.
And also the bamboo wall that lived around that hole was like gaps like this. So, you know, you're like this Acuna, this whitey in this village.
At least you could get showers every morning.
Oh, yeah. We never showered.
Never showered.
We didn't shower. You know, you're going to the bathroom and all you see are these little eyeballs looking at you through the huge gaps in the fence. And you're like, oh my gosh. Because they were excited, you know, and Acuna doesn't usually sleep in that village. That's not a regular occurrence in that town. So, yeah. So they just kind of threw us in there. And, you know, Mama Paula became one of my best friends in Mozambique. And I loved her and her family, and
Yes.
we spent years together. And so
It's wonderful, isn't it?
yeah, she
Wow.
became our Mozambican mama.
Mozambique
That-
mama.
But that was the full immersion experience,
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was
This
fun.
is great. This is awesome.
Yeah.
We definitely, we've just scratched the surface here, I could tell, but we're definitely going to have you back again. And we're going to do part 2 sometime in the future about like
Mission impossible.
yes, impossible.
No,
Impossible. But
I don't know why I said yes to this.
you guys are kicked. But so before we check out of here, and like I said, I know we've just scratched the surface. There's so many things that I know you've done and over there. Matter of fact, I believe you guys, this is you and David, still have a school over there.
Yeah.
That you support and have kids that go to school. What is it, like 3 or 4 kids in that school?
No, there's I forget the number now, 96, I think.
Oh, is that only 96 children? Is that all? And how long has the school been going for?
It's been going 7, 8. Gosh, it's got to be at like 10 or 11 years now.
Wow. So what do? You have like
So
teachers there?
Yeah, there's a school in Madagascar, actually. There's a spot we call the rubbish dump. It's literally the dump where they bring all the trash from the town. So when I was part of Iris, they approached us, the people from the village, because those kids, it's the poorest of the poor there.
Mm-hmm.
People literally lived off of what they found in the trash dumps there, and that's what they built their homes out of. And there's hundreds of people who live there. And so the president of that village, the rubbish dump village, came to us and asked us to help start a school there. And so we did that, and we were able to raise finances to actually build a building after the school had been going for a couple years. And the little schoolhouse is still there. There's 2 teachers. There's, close to 100 kids now. And it's been going all this time. And
it's amazing.
Yeah. So we still help support it. We pay for the teachers, the rent, the rent stuff, everything for the building that we have.
Wow. I wanted to bring that up.
And the milk program too.
Oh, and a milk program. Like I said, we're going to have you back because there's a lot more that goes. There's a lot more backstory to this because 8 years or 7 years of life and mission. A lot of times I think that's missing on people, that there's a long-term effect that people who are on mission have. Now you're back, you're married, you have kids, but there's still a component that is effectual over there, and mission should have that. It should have that here too, by the way, here in the United States. We should have a long-term effect. It shouldn't be just, oh, it's my thing, I'm doing it here, I get some glory out of this, and that's it. But and so I wanted to bring that attention to people listening, because that there's things they can help in too if they wanted to. If they want to be part of that, they could help. They could donate to things. They could there's a lot of ways to help, and there's a lot of smart ways to do that, and some not so smart ways to do that. So I would just say, don't be starting throwing money at people that you don't know or things like that. But just that effectual work, and how it can go on is such an important part, because I know that, you help set up things there that, I know God did that with you and through you. And I know there were other people involved too, but it's such a wonderful testimony of the goodness and grace of God and his love for people who live in a garbage dump.
Yeah.
It's so mind-boggling. It's so, there's a whole lot behind that story that we will talk another time. We'll bring a bunch of Kleenex out here because I'll get pretty weepy over that, because it should affect your heart and your soul. It should reach into you and grab you. And if you're called to this, it has to be something you embrace, and you embrace it not just for your own gratification, but for what you can do.
Yeah, I always tell people, I'm like, if you have a heart for missions or think you want to do that, and I'm like, you should be donating to missionaries or to mission groups now. Like, you shouldn't just be waiting, saving up just for this thing. But I feel like that builds your faith, and it builds
That's so good.
your heart for it is, and I started
Where
that
your
before.
treasure is, your heart will be.
Yeah. So it's like when people tell me they want to be a missionary, I'm like, okay, who are you donating to right now? Like, who are you helping right now? And, you don't have to help just this rubbish dump school, but if you want to,
but if you want to, you can contact Spirit School of Ministry. We'll get you connected with Dawn.
But if you want to talk about the goodness of God and things and how he showed up, this school has always been 100% funded. And there's been times I'm like, I don't even know where that money came from. I honestly could tell you, like, I don't know how that happened. I'm like, how did we just pay for this for 7 years? I've been back now, and it's like, it has never run out of funding. And there have been moments I thought it was going to, and then literally within minutes, God showed up and somebody made a donation, and it continued on. That's when like God wants this thing to happen. And like David said, it's not just the school. We also support the milk program, for
big
babies.
Time,
who don't have
malnourished
babies.
Yeah.
So
people, it's I hope people can grab the heart of that, because there's we talk about God showing up sometimes it's a spiritual spooky thing, but he does show up with people that want to help and just want to give. Then that's our full expression of God when we're giving on
it's
the earth.
His image.
It's his image, right? He's a giver, giving God. And so to see, like I said, when you said, I like the way you put it, God showed up and somebody gave. And, it's just so tremendous to me. Yeah. I mean, just the, or maybe, maybe they can give to, donate to the school here or a milk fund, or maybe they know a missionary.
Yeah.
And that when they're back, maybe all they can give is have them over for dinner and just love on their lives. There's a giving that's required of us that from God. And we are all part of that mission. Completely part. And I remember, it's funny, you talk about the school. I remember it was maybe the first year or second year of the school, and Mom and I were packing these
backpacks.
We were stuffing them into a suitcase to send along, I think with Pastor Pat or somebody to get to you. To give it to you. And I remembered the excitement we had that we could just help. It was such a small, when I look at it, I'd laugh. But it was so you felt the anointing of God on it. And I remember praying over them and going, "Oh God, touch whoever's this." It's such a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
And this is the glory part of missions. It's awesome and it's hard, right? It's awesome and it's crazy, and it's awesome and it's unpredictable. But it is that. And so however people can do that, but will you come back again? Will you promise everyone you'll come back someday and talk with us again?
I promise.
In pinky promise or whatever we do. I love it. But thank you so much. And and thank you for all the people, out there. I hope God's speaking to you. Hope, Rose behind the camera there is speaking to her for sure. She's on her way out. she's leaving us now. But I pray that God leads you and guides you, and that you find your calling, whatever it may be, and that you're sent and not just taken off on your own. So with that, God bless you and God keep you, and we'll see you again next time. Thank you for joining us. Be sure to subscribe to get the latest episode. And for more information, go to spiritschoolofministry.com.